Let me ask you a question. How long has it been since you last changed your cell phone? 1 year? 2 years? Maybe 3 years at the very most? I mean, come on. If you have a cell phone that's more than 5 years old, you could almost consider sending it to the nearest archaeology museum. Let's be clear, they don't make cell phones like the famous Nokia 3310 anymore. The real indestructible brick, which also came with the game Snake. So, what about household appliances? In our grandparents' house, there was a refrigerator that was there all of our lives. No one knows how it got there or when it even arrived, but the fact is that grandma's old white refrigerator will last forever and ever. It could even shield Indiana Jones from a nuclear blast. And this is something that leads us to a very obvious question. Why is it that equipment is no longer made to last as long as it used to? Why do cell phones or modern household appliances seem to break within a few years just when their warranty runs out? Well, Visualeconomik viewers, the darkest theory points to planned obsolescence. Companies could be manufacturing defective products or products with limited quality on purpose. Products that, when their expiration date arrives, automatically break. In this way, consumers are forced to buy new products over and over and over again, so the companies make a fortune from us. A profitable business at the expense of waste and consumer welfare. However, this is the only theory that often appears in the media. But this is Visualeconomik, and therefore, in this video, we're going to take a closer look at the phenomenon of planned obsolescence. Does it really exist, or is it just an unsubstantiated conspiracy theory? And if it does exist, how bad is it? And what evidence is there of it? Is it a trap that all companies engage in, or is it just focused on one particular group? Today on Visualeconomik, we're going to tell you all about it. So, let's get cracking. Let's be clear, planned obsolescence is not some unsubstantiated conspiracy theory. In fact, there are documented cases where it actually happened. Do you want an example? Well, of course you do. So let's take a look. In 1924, in Switzerland, the three largest light bulb manufacturers in the world, the German Osram, the British branch of General Electric, and the Dutch Philips, held a meeting where they agreed to create the Phoebus cartel. The name of the cartel was no coincidence. Phoebus was the Greek god of light, and with the cartel, the light bulb companies wanted to set in motion a huge plot of programmed obsolescence for their lighting products. At that time, light bulbs could have a lifetime of 1,500 to 2,500 hours. However, after the cartel meeting, the companies reduced this lifetime to only 1,000 hours, almost half of that. As a result, bulbs lost a lot of quality and lasted half as long as before, yet prices remained as high as ever. The Phoebus cartel was the first recognized case of large-scale planned obsolescence, but how significant was it? And was planned obsolescence an increasingly common habit among companies after that first Phoebus cartel case? The truth is that the academic literature on the subject is not very conclusive, and there are practically no quantitative studies that attempt to measure its effect. What does exist, however, is a great theoretical debate about whether planned obsolescence is a widespread phenomenon and how relevant it is. For example, in an important 1984 paper, Jeremy Burlow used a mathematical model to argue that while planned obsolescence could not occur in a competitive market, in a monopoly, not only could it occur, but it is something that needs to happen 100% of the time. And actually, this seems pretty intuitive. When companies do not have a monopoly and therefore do not dominate the market, if they reduce the quality of their products, consumers will notice and then buy from a competing company that manufacture more durable products. And that is partly why the Phoebus cartel was so important. All the companies were to act as one and not compete with each other, so consumers would not be able to choose higher quality alternatives. Now, does that mean that the reason behind all products now lasting less time is that companies form cartels like Phoebus? Well, let's see. There are actually more reasons beside planned obsolescence that could explain this phenomenon. For example, some writers point out that it is not that dishwashers, televisions, or clothes don't last as long as they used to, but that these days they are simply not repaired. Think about your own life. When was the last time you mended a pair of pants, or the last time you took a television apart? It was probably a long time ago, and certainly repairing things was much more common in our grandparents' generation than it is today. As a result, it is not that things don't last as long now, it is that we ourselves do not make an effort to make them last longer. Now, there might be a bit of a catch to all of this. You see, the lack of repairs is often the fault of the manufacturers themselves, who refuse to repair their products or who make it very expensive. For instance, replacing the battery in an iPhone usually costs between $50 and $100. Given this cost, it is not uncommon for many people to opt to pay a little more and just buy a new refurbished model. In a sense, expensive repairs are another form of planned obsolescence that pushes us to buy new products every every few years. The question is, are repairs becoming more expensive because companies want to force us to buy more, or is it due to another factor? In this case, everything indicates that the problem does not lie with the companies. For many years now, the price of technological products has plummeted. Materials are becoming cheaper, construction is becoming more efficient, and the cost of labor in Asian countries, where they are manufactured, is criminally low. When we go to the Apple store to get our phone repaired, the repair person is a Western technician with a Western salary. On the other hand, an Asian worker in a factory in Vietnam, because they are paid so little, is able to produce a new phone for less than the cost of repair by a Western technician. In other words, the rising cost of repairs is not a conspiracy of big business, but a reflection of the fact that Western wages are increasingly higher in relation to factory wages at the beginning of the supply chain. Be that as it may, this is not the only evidence against planned obsolescence. If you think about it, there are many products designed to last for many years. So what's the problem? The problem is that almost nobody buys them. In a German study where the quality of household appliances was analysed, it was found that high quality washing machines lasted up to 50% longer than medium quality washing machines. Durable and good quality products do exist, however, they are more expensive and the general public tends to go for the cheaper options. That is not to say that people are stupid and want to buy poor quality stuff, obviously. In reality, there are very good reasons for not wanting an appliance that will last for many years. For example, technological improvements. A person may prefer an average quality cell phone that lasts 2 years, but when they renew it, they can buy one with much more up-to-date technology to buying an expensive, durable cell phone that will soon become technologically obsolete. In other words, would you prefer a cell phone with technology from 2010 that lasts a long time, or a current one that lasts 2 years? I think you get my point. After all, technological progress is not just about more powerful cell phones, bigger televisions, or washing machines with more programs. The essential improvement can be found in the main source of expenditure in almost any household appliance: the cost of energy. Technology advances increase the energy efficiency of household appliances, which saves families a fortune. And this improved efficiency is something we see just about everywhere: water heaters, refrigerators, lighting, all over the house. Therefore, wanting technology with a long lifespan may even be counterproductive, as the authors of the German study point out.
Our research shows that the expected consumer lifespan is very close to the average lifespan of the actual appliance. Therefore, if product lifespans are increased for ecological reasons, both industry and consumers need to change. Laura Hennies, Rainer Stamminger, an empirical survey on the obsolescence of appliances in German households.
Having said all this, it is worth noting one thing. Beyond the Phoebus cartel, there have been virtually no additional cases of proven planned obsolescence. But what if I told you that beyond the traditional concept of planned obsolescence, there could be a completely new form of manipulation? What if I told you that companies could have hidden obsolescence in a way other than the traditional way? Do you want to know what I'm talking about? Of course you do. So let's take a look.
Marketing-based obsolescence?
If there is one phrase that perfectly sums up the most common criticisms of planned obsolescence, it is the one by industrial designer Brooks Stevens.
Planned obsolescence installs in the buyer the desire to own something a little newer, a little better, a little sooner than necessary. Brooks Stevens.
If you notice, Brooks Stevens' concept of obsolescence has nothing to do with the Phoebus cartel ploy. But let's look at a more specific case, the case of Apple. Apple releases new versions of its products every year that, in reality, are often not so different from previous versions. They often incorporate a couple of technological improvements, but really not much. Somehow, Apple convinces lots and lots of people to keep buying their products even though they seemingly have no great need for them. In contrast, the Phoebus cartel was not trying to convince its customers with marketing or small improvements, but was forcing them to buy from them by running down the bulbs faster. You see the difference here? The attitude of consumers who buy purely due to marketing or to have the latest novelty, even if the improvement is marginal to many, may seem harmful and unnecessary. After all, if we could be content with slightly lower performing products for a few more years, we wouldn't generate so much waste, have huge mountains of old computers and cell phones in landfills, or consume so many resources. Yet, these products do not stop responding to the desires of consumers who, no matter how much marketing is behind them, know exactly what they are buying. What's more, if you were one of those who more than a decade ago did own a Nokia cell phone, as we saw at the beginning of this this video, I am sure of two things. The first is that it will still be working today. It may even still have battery life left, but it is also very likely that you are not using it. So let me ask you this question. Wouldn't you have preferred them to have been somewhat cheaper in their day in exchange for them not lasting so long? In other words, there is always a trade-off between quality and price, and when it comes to those indestructible bricks, you don't get much out of all that extra life. In the same vein, there is also criticism around some products, mainly clothing and accessories, but we could go back to the example of Apple products, which are often not bought because they are really useful, but as a sign of status. In this way, the aesthetic changes are not to make them prettier, but to differentiate the products and thus differentiate those who have been able to afford the latest model from those who have not. And what do you want me to say here? Once again, this might seem positive or negative to you, but it is a matter that is outside the realm of economics. At this point, many of you might be thinking, okay, it is true that there might be reasons for not wanting such long-lasting products, but haven't we seen examples of giant companies like those involved in Phoebus shortening the life of their products without benefiting any consumers? Well, yes, of course. It is something that can happen. Even so, the truth is that if you look at it closely, the Phoebus story is more an example of why these kinds of practices don't usually work. And even so, the truth is that if you look very closely, the Phoebus story is more of an example of why these kind of practices don't usually work, and how reality is often more boring than fascinating conspiracy theories. But before we see why, take a look at this chart. More than 70% of the people who are watching Visualeconomik are not yet subscribed to the channel. Do you like economics? Do you like understanding why some countries perform better than others? Maybe you're interested in knowing what inflation or wealth or the success of political or business measures depend on. Well, if you're interested in all of this and you want to see more videos like this one, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, and now let's see what's really behind the Phoebus cartel.
The conspiracy that wasn't.
So let's recap. In 1924, the top leaders of the cutting-edge companies in the light bulb manufacturing sector agreed to form the Phoebus cartel. However, this was not a secret pact, but something that was public knowledge. The main objective of this cartel was not to reduce the lifetime of light bulbs, but to divide the market to avoid competition while sharing and developing patents. These patents are much more important than they might appear at first glance. At that time, each manufacturer made completely different bulbs, meaning some lasted 2,500 hours and others 1,500. But in some countries, such as the United Kingdom, the standard had already been 1,000 hours at least since 1921, 3 years before the cartel was formed. Part of the decrease in bulb life hours after the cartel was formed is explained simply by the fact that some companies had access to patents for shorter lasting bulbs. And why was it a desirable thing for those patents to be developed if the bulbs didn't last as long? Well, because even though they lasted less time, the bulbs were cheaper and more efficient. Furthermore, on the subject of prices, although it is often claimed that they did not fall after the formation of the cartel, the truth is that the data at the country level is not so clear-cut. Going back to the UK, in a report by the Electric Lamp Manufacturers Association, yes, there was such associations, we didn't make up that name, a report was presented showing that bulb prices actually decreased after the formation of the cartel. In fact, the Phoebus cartel as a business strategy was a long-term failure. After an initial boom between 1930 and 1933, its sales fell by 20%. It turns out that the cartel was officially dissolved in 1940 due to the beginning of World War II. Yet by that time, it had already ceased much of its activity because it was being swept away by the competition. To give you an idea, in 1938, Phoebus marketing and administrative costs amounted to 48.8% compared to 32.2% for independent companies. And perhaps the greatest irony of this story is that the competition did not take advantage of the 1,000-hour bulbs to offer a better product, but a considerably worse one. Yep, that's what I said. The competition, particularly from Nordic and Japanese companies, stormed the market with bulbs lasting fewer than 1,000 hours that were much less luminous, but much cheaper. In order to compete, Phoebus launched a B line of lower quality bulbs with an average life of 900 hours and a 30% lower price. However, these bulbs were not sold under the brand name of the main companies, but rather under the name of small companies with association with the cartel, all with the aim of not damaging its image, which at that time was of a medium-high range manufacturer. This famous cartel was anything but a money-making machine for its directors. The Phoebus cartel was short-lived, not particularly profitable, and to top it all off, its competitors won the trade war with poorer quality products. So what's the summary of all this? 1. Planned obsolescence is a phenomenon for which there is little evidence, and the evidence that it does exist, such as the Phoebus cartel, did not prosper very much. 2. Short-lived products are not necessarily bad, especially if the payoff is lower prices and greater technological flexibility. And 3. There are high-quality products options on the market that last as long or longer than the old ones. But at this point, it's over to you. Do you think the God of Light cartel story has been exaggerated? Do you buy high-end appliances, or are you happy for them to break down sooner in exchange for being cheaper? What do you think of the strategy of some companies to make their less new products appear obsolete? You can leave us your answer in the comments below. And as always, don't forget that here on Visualeconomik, we release new videos every week. So subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell button down there so you don't miss any of our updates. If you like this video, like it so we know. I hope you enjoyed it. All the best, and I'll see you next time.